Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from AnthonysCustoms, and for this review, we are looking at the SH Figuarts Dragon Ball Z VEGETA. Now, we've seen this design for VEGETA before. It was one of the earlier figures, and people not that early, it was early enough, but people liked it, but it had some problems. Now, this is from the new batch of figures. That's why I mentioned the earlier part a second ago. This has got the new articulation all the way through, slightly different styling in the sculpt. So the question is going to be, is this guy a worthy replacement for the other one? And we're going to answer that as we go. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about 6.5 inches tall to the very top of his hair. That makes him about 5.25 to the top of his head. And that's going to make him roughly 13.5 to the top of his head and about 16.5 to the top of his hair. He's actually too big. He's smaller than most of your other Figuarts. I don't have any with me right now that I can show you, unfortunately, but if you looked at any of my reveal videos talking about this guy, or if you just look at the measurements, he's too tall. He should be much shorter. This version of VEGETA is very tiny, and you'll see once Nappa comes out, Nappa's too small as well, but he's too big in relation to Nappa. So, you know, the scaling is definitely not great these days for the Figuarts line. And so the first thing we're going to notice about this guy is paint. Where is it? There's like no paint on here other than they painted the yellow onto the white spots. And then his face has some details. That's it. There's really no shading in the blue. There is zero shading in the white. And they didn't paint these recessed lines in the yellow armor. It looks very unfinished. Very, very not cool. And then the thing is, they did put a little bit of shading in the blue, but that's only right there on his junk. It looks like he pissed himself again, just like Gohan. What are they doing? Why? How did anybody decide, don't shade the figure except for on his wiener? Like, that's not a thing that should have happened. And then they make the effort of putting paint inside the armor. Like, I appreciate that, but how about the stuff that we can see? Where's all that paint? It's very disappointing. Like, no, these are supposed to be better than the earlier versions, and in a lot of ways this figure is not, and it's pretty disappointing. So let's go ahead and run through the accessories, and then you'll see in the articulation some more problems that we're going to have. So we have two different heads, one that can receive the scouter and one that cannot. And then we have four different faces, one that's fairly standard, plain, neutral face, one smirking face, one with his teeth showing, and then one where he's yelling. And I do think they nailed his face. It's fantastic. I don't have any complaints at all with the sculpt or paint on his faces. They all look really, really good. As far as the scouters go, we have one with a readout on it, which is fantastic, and one that's just standard, empty, no readout on it at all, and they do peg in much better than the earlier version of this VEGETA, so that's very nice. We do have two interchangeable tails, one that wraps around his belt, which is just big enough to fit. It barely fits around his waist to peg into itself, and then to peg into his butt. You can actually see it doesn't fit properly, so that's kind of a bummer. And then we do have the one that's not wrapped around, but the paint on this thing is just very chalky, milky, doesn't look very good, so disappointed with that. As far as interchangeable hands go, we have two fist hands, two kind of claw hands, two wide open hands, and then one hand where he's clenching his broken scouter. That's it. So they've cut back on the number of hands as well. And then we do have a folded arms accessory, which swaps out at the bicep. So it's not like it's a tiny amount of accessories, but compared to what we've seen in the past and relative to the amount of paint on this guy, I do feel like it's lacking a little bit. I'm a little bit bummed out so far. So let's see if the articulation can make up for it. As far as the head goes, it's still on the SH Figuarts little tiny ball hinge on top of the neck, so the head can look up and down and rotate, and if you wiggle that ball hinge around, you'll be able to move it around. So it is effective. A ball hinge is still not the best way to do the neck, but you can make it work, so that's fine. And as you probably noticed, the neck is moving around as well, so that's pretty good, so no problems there. These shoulder pads have a hinge. It's pretty much useless because the arm can't go up any higher than that. I don't know how that ended up becoming a thing, but he's got very minimal range in his arm. Obviously, you can rotate it around, but that's not going to be that effective with the shoulder pad. I mean, it doesn't really need to be moved unless you wanted his arm to go straight up, and I guess that's okay, but then it still doesn't look good. I feel like they just didn't put very much effort into designing this guy. They did give him a butterfly joint, an actual butterfly, not just the ball peg that we're used to. We do have a bicep swivel, which is fine. No problems there, of course. Double jointed elbow, Gives you better than 90, so that's good. We have our little tiny ball hinge in the wrist, which is as effective as normal, so no problems there. For the diaphragm joint, I do believe it's a hinged ball peg in there, so you can kind of lift him up and then lean him, but it doesn't actually give you very much range. He's just leaning a little bit, and I mean, it's better than when he's not lifted up at all, but it's still very minimal. So I don't know, I guess that's okay. It's not bad, it just doesn't really do much. And then leaning him back is also very minimal, so not great range there. Side to side works okay, and rotating him is not really great because it only goes at an angle because of how it's designed, unless you lift him up and then rotate him, but then he looks like his torso's been stretched out. So it's not a great situation. Rotating his waist is okay, but the entire armor goes with it, and the tail does not. So the tail is going to unsnap because it pegs into his butt, but moves around with the armor. So the tail will come apart, and like I said, it barely fits. So that is not a good situation, so we're going to leave that off. The armor does all have individual hinges on it, but if you look at how it's designed, it drops down below the waistline. So it's going to be problematic posing this guy. It's going to be getting in the way, like right there. That's binding on it right now. It doesn't want to go because it's going to scratch onto that crotch piece. And then you're going to scratch off that peed my pants paint on there, so that's not cool. You don't want that. And then, posing the hips, they don't have very much range going out to the side, but they do swivel all the way forward normally, but the armor's in the way, so you have to put the armor down first and then do it, and then you still don't get very good range. They totally botched this. There's so many problems with this guy. You do get a thigh swivel, so that's okay. The knees work okay, so that's all right. I'll give them that. No problems there. And then the ankles. This is such a bad ankle design too. It's an offset double ball peg, so you can't really lean the foot forward like that. You have to pull it back, and then you can lean it forward. So you have to basically dislocate his ankle in order to lean it forward, and leaning it back, you only can do it like that, which creates a big hole in the front of his boot. So that's terrible. And then leaning it to the side is pretty much impossible. It just doesn't really do anything. And then we have a toe hinge, which works okay. So this guy is just like a big flop. It looks good, but that's about it. And it only looks good in the sense that it's sculpted well and has some saturated colors. It's still missing about one pass of paint everywhere in terms of shading and low lights and that kind of thing. So this guy, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty disappointing. And then even if you take the tail off because it doesn't fit properly and put the other tail on, just the way the armor is handled with the hinges, it just doesn't fit right. I don't know what they were doing with this guy, but I feel like this one, and then at first I liked the trunks that came out, but then I didn't like it very much after a while. They just seem to be kind of phoning these Dragon Ball figures in lately, so I'm a little bit bummed out, and I'm not that optimistic going forward. I'm hoping they get their stuff turned around, but yeah, it's kind of disappointing. The faces are fantastic. I like the Scouter, and that's it. So let me know what you guys think. Are you bummed out too? I was really looking forward to this, but they didn't give me a whole lot to like about it. So that'll do, guys. I mean, if you don't have one, get this one because it's going to be way cheaper, but it's not a great figure by any means. It's a passable figure at best. So yeah, there you go. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.